everybody. Happy Sunday. We are really excited to be here for another episode of Sunday Devotional. This is a series that we started with the advent of COVID when church got canceled so that we could have some spirituality in our lives. And it's been a great experience. And here we are for another episode. And I am Philip Rachel Wagner, and Chris is here.
Good morning. So glad to be back.
Yeah, good morning. So we have a bit of an announcement. There's a little housekeeping at the beginning of this. So next week, we are going to have a special episode of Sunday Devotional that's going to be a live episode as part of the Guy at the Movies Virtual Film Festival that's going to be next Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific. We are going to be doing our live episode of Sunday Devotional, and it's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a little bit more of a sort of a secular discussion. We're going to be talking about toxic fandom, but it's going to be really good. And the whole festival is really good. Like some of the biggest names, Sean Chandler is going to be there. A bunch of other people are going to be doing panels. We're going to be doing a live episode of Hallmarkies podcast on Sunday. So that will be really fun. We're going to be looking at the movie Hitch, which is a lot of fun. So lots of stuff going on. But so next week we will actually be airing that live broadcast on Sunday. So that's kind of what's going on for next week. So it'll be a little bit different, but if you can make it on Saturday, I'll put all the information for the festival and the panel in the description section. And that's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to talking about toxic fandom.
Yeah.
It's going to be
Sounds
fun.
like a wonderfully awesome topic.
Yes.
Can't wait. It will be fun. I can't wait.
And we know that none of you listening to Sunday Devotional are toxic fans. So, but hopefully you'll enjoy it. It'll be a really good discussion. So today, though, we are talking about self-confidence. And I think you had said in our little text chat that that for preparing for this, you felt like that you had lost a certain degree of self-confidence. And I think that's true sometimes for me as well, that it's like, wow, this has been a hard week.
Yeah.
I think he sometimes pushes us when, the teacher always learns more than the students, as we know. And I think that was true this week. I'm like, why am I teaching a lesson on self-confidence? I don't know.
So I had the weirdest week. So 1 week ago today, I dropped this video on the War of the Worlds called Spiritual Warfare, and about how that movie reminded me of spiritual warfare and how to be on guard against spiritual warfare. Little did I know how much that video was actually for me, because how much spiritual warfare came against me and my self-confidence after that. Because as we approach DC fandom, I was like, I need a DC analysis to come out weekend of DC fandom. And so I started working on this Batman Begins video, and I called it Batman Begins, Fear Ends, and about how Bruce Wayne has to confront the fear in him to overcome it so that Batman can truly begin. And as I started doing that, I couldn't believe how much my self-confidence was attacked in recording that video. It took me about 2 or 3 days, I think, to record that video. And there were a couple other external factors, like we're in this major heat wave where I live right now. And I'm sitting here in a hot studio light, just sweating up a storm, as well as I can't get the words out. And it just felt like every bit of my self-confidence was attacked when I was trying to do this Batman video, because I couldn't get out of my head. And all I kept hearing was, your words won't connect. That's a really stupid point. What are you even thinking saying something dumb like that? And it was really funny, because it's like, how is it I did a video on spiritual warfare and I'm under intense warfare? How is it I'm doing a video about overcoming fear and now I'm dealing with this intense fear? And then I realized, because God is talking to me. And now I need to take my points that I made in spiritual warfare that I was trying to teach others, the points that I'm trying to make in this Batman Begins video, and it's time to apply it. Yeah. And when I started to apply it, then I felt the ministry begin to flow out of me where I was able to speak on that topic again. It was so interesting.
Yeah, like sometimes it's like, Lord, I didn't need the visual aid. I got it.
Yes.
but, but yeah, I kind of felt, I don't know, this week it just felt like a pile on. There was a lot going on this week. But that's why it's so great to be doing this, because that we have that spiritual fortification that, to be honest, I might not have been as diligent about reading my scriptures and preparing and thinking about these things if I didn't have it. So it's really, really, really good. And that kind of goes into the first key, I think, to having self-confidence, is to be prepared. And
Yes.
if you are going to be participating in any activity and you want to feel more confident, the best way that you can be confident is to be prepared. And that doesn't, there's definitely cases where you can kind of psych yourself out on things, and I get that. But I think that also sort of part of your preparation is trying to prepare to deal with that
Yeah.
happening. And I've just seen it so many times with my interviews and with podcasts. And if I'm ever trying to just wing it, it is never as good. It is never. And sometimes people think, oh, I'm caught up in the spirit, and so I'm just going to change everything, and I'm going to get caught up in the spirit. And when that can work, I guess. But I think most of the time that the preparation really does help, and maybe preparation then to help you to be able to get caught up in the spirit.
Yeah.
But I don't know. What do you think about that with preparation?
Well, preparation is incredibly important, and doing it from a YouTube channel. But there's also been times where I've gone and spoken publicly at different places and different clubs and things, just giving a message. And you got to show up to those things prepared. And what
Yeah.
what I like is you talked about getting caught up in the spirit, because what I found as a believer, that is a very real thing. Because sometimes you could be incredibly prepared, but you show up somewhere and God has a different plan. And he has somebody in particular that he wants to reach. But even in those moments where we get caught up in the spirit and the Lord does something different than we were planning, I usually find it's because we were prepped up that we're even ready
Yeah.
to improv. It's the fact that we were prepared that it sounds so contradictory, but it's the fact that I show up prepared and now God wants me to improv. It's because I was prepared. I now have confidence to improv. I have that confidence to take the direction he's leading me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And that you then are in a place where he trusts you to be able to be able to follow that spirit.
Yeah.
That you are prepared, and you will just feel confident enough in yourself to be able to do that, and to be able to work on the fly, and to be able to, and that's what people that are really well prepared and have practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced, what they do is they make it seem easy and effortless, even though it's not, because
Yeah.
they are so well prepared. And so that's really, really important. And I thought about the example in the scriptures of Joseph, and you have the Pharaoh's dream of, with 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. And if they had not been prepared and used that 7 years of plenty to prepare for the 7 years of famine, they would have been in bad shape. And but they were prepared,
Yeah.
and that preparation made them strong and able to deal with the terrible time of famine.
That whole story of Joseph is incredibly interesting, because you can look at it this way. Before his brothers threw him in that well, Joseph was living in a time of plenty. Things were fine for him. And in that time of plenty, God gave Joseph 2 dreams. And in those 2 dreams gave Joseph a vision for his future. And then his brothers threw him in that well. And then he prospered in Potiphar's house, and then he was accused of a crime he didn't commit and was thrown in prison. And then he prospered in prison until finally he ended up at Pharaoh's right hand. But none of that could have been the least bit easy. And
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer that Joseph went into that prepared because of the vision God had given him. When Potiphar's wife was tempting him and wanted him, I'm sure he's a red-blooded male and
Mm-hmm.
he wanted her too.
Yeah.
But he honored God. He honored God above all of that stuff and didn't want to dishonor God. And I think it's his relationship with God and the vision that God had put in him that gave him that strength to resist that temptation, because more than a passing moment of sin, he wanted what God had for him. And so he honored God above all of that. And so God prepped Joseph, and Joseph was prepped for that difficult time.
Yeah. That's true. That is true. Throughout his life,
Yeah.
he was prepared to deal with the things that he dealt with, and I think that that's true for all of us. I mean, people have no idea the preparation that goes into even the Sunday devotionals or an episode
Yeah.
of my podcast or whatever. It might seem like, oh, they're just like sitting there talking, but it's not interesting sitting there talking if there isn't quite a lot of preparation. And when I am nervous, it's usually because I'm a little bit unprepared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those theological analyses I put together are probably the hardest videos that I do. They're the
Yeah.
most rewarding, but like I said, the funny thing is I didn't realize that spiritual warfare video I was doing was supposed to be preparation for other stuff and reminding me that it is
Mm-hmm.
kind of spiritual warfare I do when I sit there and I do those theological analyses. So I need to be prepped and not
Yeah.
just, know what I want to say in the video, which takes its own prep work and to give me that confidence, but also to be built up in God's word and his promises, and let that be really strong in my heart and practicing that myself. And that way I'm prepared when I sit down in front of that camera.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. So the second key, in my opinion, to having self-confidence is to stop believing the imposter syndrome. And what the imposter syndrome is that you feel like you aren't qualified or don't belong in your life. And this is something I do think particularly women are terrible at. And you'll see it all the time that somebody will have an accomplishment and then they will immediately kind of downplay it of like, oh, it's nothing, it's nothing, it's nothing. And I think that the part of that is there's sort of this underlying fear that if someone does some digging, they'll realize, oh, they're really not that good at that. And I sometimes struggle with that. Sometimes I was actually just talking to a friend about it, that sometimes I feel a little bit like an imposter on being a Rotten Tomatoes critic, because I didn't apply and they just found me. And other people that have way more followers than I do, have way more other qualifications, they get denied. I get accepted. I was like, and sometimes I struggle with that a little bit, and people ask, how did you get it? And I'm like, they just called me, like I have no and so sometimes I struggle a little bit, feeling a little bit that imposter kind of thing. But then I have to remind myself that I did all the work. I had nearly 1,000 reviews, whether on my blog or on my channel. I have this successful podcast. I have a lot of things I've created, so I am qualified. It's just sometimes I feel like I'm an imposter critic, and so I fight that. And I think that we all do that to a certain degree or another, and it can be really hard on our confidence. Like, I'm not feeling like a great valid critic when I'm listening to those voices of you're just a fake, you're a phony, you're just a token, they just wanted more women, they don't care, kind of a thing. And that's not good for my self-confidence. And so I think that's really important. There's an article about this that I read when I was in college, and that I really love. I have a whole post. I'll put a link where the author, she says, why is it so hard for women to accept their own genius? What are we afraid of? And what does it mean when we don't allow ourselves to relish in a job well done? By denying our own capabilities, we prevent ourselves from fully enjoying what we've worked so hard to achieve. And what do you think about that, about imposter syndrome?
That's a very real thing. And I mean, I've dealt with it at different points in my life. And there's been times I sit there and I do a theological analysis and I'm like, man, I'm such an imposter here. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, sure, how you bring it these points. Do I really live up to that? But, it's one of those things where God just reminds us how much he loves us, how much he cares about us. And sometimes when he points out those little things, it's not to make us feel like imposters. It's to grow us and to strengthen us and to make us stronger. And I was looking at this because I was reading some of the notes you wrote when you sent them, and I was looking at Philippians 4, where it says, fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. So there's a literal choice we have to make in our mind to fix our thoughts on those good things. And I feel like we get this idea that humility is we got to be down on ourselves, but that's not humility at all. Humility doesn't mean we need to talk down to ourselves, be negative about ourselves, and say we're really bad at something. Real humility is just a correct estimation of ourselves. That's really what it is. And so knowing that Christ loves us, that's not a proud thing to say. He truly and dearly loves us. To say we're gifted, that's not a wrong thing to say. God invested gifts and talents inside of us to use in the world. And so we need to step out in confidence and use those gifts that he's given us. So humility is having that right knowledge of who we are in God's eyes and having that strength to step out and do what he's called us to do.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It reminds me of in Emma. This is particularly in the 1996 version of Emma, the Mrs. Elton character, and she always has this sort of fake humility about her, where she'll say things like, "I never compliment myself, but my friends tell me that I know how to make a sandwich." Just things like that. Or whatever it might be. I never compliment myself. And that's false humility.
Yes.
It's very funny, but it's false humility. And I think we've all seen people like that that don't quite get it, I don't think. It can be a really self-defeating thing when we don't allow ourselves to feel the joy of our accomplishments in our life, and to be confident when you, and like I said, I do feel like women are particularly bad at this, that, it's like you have a beautiful home, you have a beautiful accomplishments, and it's like, oh, it's nothing. Don't worry, don't worry about that. It was easy. You're like, no, it was not. Stop saying that. But so I think it's something that can be, because nothing is perfect, and I think for some of us that want that perfection, that we'll sing a song, and everybody in the whole room thinks it's beautiful, but we're the ones that notice the flaws, and it's not as good as, we're not the next Josh Groban, so it's worthless, instead of being grateful and being confident in what that we have to contribute. I think it's really important.
I'm going to totally paraphrase C.S. Lewis and hopefully not destroy what he said. I can't remember which of his books it was in, but he was talking about humility, and one of the ways he talked about it is real humility is you can create something, step back and look at it as if somebody else had created it and say, wow, that is really good. And then you just move on. You move on to the next thing. And so it's not about bragging and getting full of yourself or defeating yourself or talking bad. And all. It's that ability to step back and go, no, that was really good. That did take talent. And then to have that thankfulness to say, God, thank you for giving me that gift of talent. To me, that's humility. Like that's the right estimation that God has given us that gift. And we can have confidence in God. If we can't have confidence in ourselves, we can have confidence in God. And he made us, and he put gifts in us. So at the very least, we can have confidence in what he's invested in us. And we can know we're worth something because he makes us worth something.
Yeah. Next thing that I think can help with self-confidence is to make our goals a matter of prayer. In Philippians 4:13, he says, I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me. And I think sometimes we don't really believe it. We will go to the Lord. What Lord do you want me to do? And he tells us what he wants us to do, and we don't really believe we can do it. But if we are willing to be obedient and to follow. I mean, think of so many examples in the scriptures of people that didn't think that they could do the things that they're called to do. Even people that fight it, like someone like a Jonah, that fight it and fight it and fight it, and then finally they do it. And I think that that goes a long way. If we have made our goals and wishes and desires a part of our prayer, that God will help us to feel confident in that. And if we know that it's what Heavenly Father wants us to do, then we're going to feel more confident about it.
Yeah. It's interesting because as you're saying that, it reminded me of Moses when he saw the burning bush and he was trying to come up with every excuse in the book.
Yeah.
Why he couldn't do it. And one of the biggest ones that sticks to my mind is he says he couldn't talk. He says he had a stutter. And so I'm picturing him stuttering there with God, like, you want me to go and talk to Pharaoh, and I can barely get a word out here. But I have a study note in one of my Bibles, and it's a really good note because it talked about how God did not want Moses to miss out on that opportunity, to be used by him. And I just can sense that with so many of our lives that we do that. Like, and I can think about myself. So many times I do shrink back. Like, I ask God for wisdom and I kind of see where he's leading. And instead of being all bold like I was when I was praying, I'm suddenly like, oh, okay, maybe not. What else you got, Lord? But it's that thing with Moses where, hey, if he's calling us to it, if he says you can do it, then you can. If he's saying, I want you to do this, and you feel like I have no skill, no talent, no ability there, well, he's saying do it. If he's saying it, then that must mean he's got some sort of plan for you, and you could trust what he says. And so just like with Moses, God didn't want him to miss that opportunity. He doesn't want us to miss those opportunities.
Yeah,
and I think
that's
God
true.
does a good job of helping us not miss those great opportunities.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, with Jesus, he had full confidence of Peter walking on water, which is something that I wouldn't necessarily have confidence in doing. But he did it, and he did walk on water. And then it wasn't until he got distracted, he started to lose confidence, that he started to sink. And there can be great comfort in that story as well, because who was there to rescue him? Jesus was there.
Yep.
And it's the same way with us. We have confidence. The Lord has confidence in us. We go along our way. We start to lose confidence. He's there to help us. And sometimes it can feel like, why are you're sure taking a long time? But he is there, and we have to trust. We have to trust him. And I thought of the example of from It's a Wonderful Life with Clarence, when he says, strange, isn't it? Each man's life touches so many others. When he isn't around, he leaves an awful hole, doesn't he? And you think of the importance that each person has to all of us. I mean, that's the whole story of It's a Wonderful Life, and that how much we are part of God's plan, and that alone should give us a lot of confidence.
Yeah, it's funny because that is a really good example, because it makes me think things that cause me to shrink back, like where sometimes I lack confidence, is sometimes I just don't feel smart enough to take on this, or I don't feel capable enough to take on that. And I find, and especially this week when I was putting together that Batman Begins video, and what kind of made that video such a challenge for me is, here I am in the video saying we need to look at God, but I'm realizing as I'm recording the video how much of my own fears I keep looking at, how much lies in my life I keep agreeing with, realizing that I need to exercise more and looking at God. if he's telling me to do something, I don't have to worry about how dumb I feel or how weak I feel or how incapable I feel. If I keep looking at him, he's capable of anything and everything. And he calls the weak to do strong things. And
Mm-hmm.
he shames the strong when he does that. He's given all of this amazing infinite wisdom, not to the wise and the philosophers, but to the foolish. And so when you look at it that way and you realize that God uses the small things of the world to shame those big things of the world, I have no reason to have any lack of confidence in myself. I just have to exercise taking my eyes off of what I'm afraid of and putting my eyes on his greatness.
Yeah, I had a quote. It's by someone named Robert Brault. He says, "Enjoy the little things, for one day you may look back and realize they were the big things."
Yep.
And I think that's really true. That you can have confidence if you feel like, if you learn to look at any situation as a learning experience and a learning opportunity, and what can I gain from this experience, then you won't feel like you are so, devastated by what has happened. I mean, and that's something I really struggled when I was doing open water swimming, because I would put so much effort into the one race. I mean, literally like 6 months of my life. And then we come up to that race and I would start having this anxiety and this panic and everything. And one thing I would try, I wasn't the best at it sometimes, but I would try to just tell myself, if I don't end up finishing the race, that's an experience. I've had that experience, like
Yeah.
I probably will be able to finish it because I've been working really hard. But if there's some reason why I don't, then that will be an experience that I will
Yeah.
just, think to do. And I think that helps. And I have to say, my father is so good at this. He is so good at looking at the what he can learn from anything that happens, and from any situation that he's very introspective, but in a way that's very helpful. And if you ever are in a crisis of any kind, my dad is the person you want on there. He is just the best when it comes to any kind of challenge that you're facing. And my mom's almost better for those sort of everyday, like I'm going to check in with her and we're going to talk about our everyday kind of challenges and blessings and everything. But my dad is so great about finding the positives and getting through those challenging times. And it's just and he's an extremely confident person in his life. He's confident with who he is. He doesn't need approval from anybody. And so that really has been a great blessing in my life to see. And it's just it makes you want to be around people like that.
Yeah.
And we all have moments where we maybe are lacking confidence, but if we can just get a feel for how much God loves us and how invested he is in our lives, it can go such a long way to being happy and to having self-confidence that we might lack, is if we can just capture that spirit of how much God loves us and how important we are to his plan.
Yeah. It's funny, like I think the two things that really came to me this week were thankfulness. Like that was one of the
Mm-hmm.
biggest things that kept hitting me this week, was being thankful
Yeah.
for where I am, what I have the capability to do. Because it's amazing how thankfulness breaks those negative cycles in our mind. And that really can up our self-confidence, because thankfulness is looking back in that positive way of what we've accomplished, what God has accomplished, what we have in our lives. And it's amazing how it can really do that. But
Mm-hmm.
the other thing, like as you were talking, this popped in my head, is the verse where God says, "In your weakness, my strength is made perfect."
Yeah.
God doesn't want to leave us very much room to have self-doubt. Instead, he wants us to really be looking at him and know, yeah, I'm limited, but he's not.
Yeah.
And that's where my great confidence can lie.
Yeah. And the other thing too is that remember that comparison is the thief of joy.
Yes, it
And
is.
if
Yes.
we are comparing our own accomplishments to another person, first of all, most of the time we're comparing our worst to their best. And we also, in the day of social media, we're comparing a manufactured version of that person, and not the actual person. We're it's like a highlight reel. Anybody's
Yeah.
great on their highlight reel, they're going to look really good. And this is another thing actually that my father is very good at. He doesn't compare. I don't feel like compares himself to other people. He's confident in who he is, and I think that that can, if we're not satisfied, again, to use the example of we've just sung a beautiful song, everybody in the room is very happy with it and has enjoyed our song, but because we're comparing ourselves to Josh Groban or whatever, that
Yeah.
some professional singer, then all of a sudden we feel like garbage and we're the worst. And so we've taken away the joy of that experience, that everybody else is having a great time and has had a wonderful experience. And
Yep.
so it's a very, very, very easy thing to allow yourself to do, but it's something that we shouldn't do. We
Yes.
should be confident and be grateful for the moments in life that we get to be a leader and get to see our vision play out, of what we want to do in our lives. And I think that that it's a bit of a struggle, it's a bit of a battle, but I think it's important, and we get better at it
Yeah.
as we go.
And it
More,
is a battle because
yeah,
I've always had that head knowledge. And one boss that I had said it the best, like with social media and stuff, when we're looking at all that, we are comparing our inward experience with their outward. So we
yeah,
have this internal turmoil and we're
that's
comparing
right.
that to what looks so good on social media. So you're right, that is the thief of joy. And I know that. I've always had that head knowledge. And it was amazing how easily I fell for the trap of comparison. It's
Yeah,
crazy. It really is a battle that all of us face. So I think we need to have that right expectation. We're
yeah,
human, we're not perfect. We're going to face like battles like that. But
hmm,
that's also why thankfulness is the whole counter to that comparison. Because
yeah,
rather than comparing and I'm being thankful, that will build confidence because I'm remembering what I have and I'm
yeah.
being thankful for what I have.
And if we are prepared, going back to our first point,
Yes.
then we will be able to, it's like a full circle. Well, we
Yes.
be prepared, we can have the experience, then we can be grateful for the experience, and then we can go back to preparing again.
Yep.
And that makes a confident, assured person that doesn't need the validation of other people to feel accomplished, and it doesn't feel like an imposter in their own lives.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's really interesting. So let us know what you think about this idea of self-confidence. What's some things that help you to feel confident? Maybe some things we didn't discuss. We'd love to hear in the comments your thoughts there. And make sure you check out the live episode next week in the film festival. Again, I'll have all that information in the description section, so you should check it out. It's going to be really fun. And Chris, where can people find you?
You can find me right here on YouTube. My channel is called Durbania. I'll be the one and only that pops up, and I do movie reviews. I rank movies. I react to trailers, mostly to movies that I'm really interested in. Otherwise, I don't, but I react to trailers. And then I have this thing called a theological analysis where I love to find God in movies. So come and check it out.
Great. Yes, you guys should definitely check it out. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So please check that out. I really appreciate it. And also, I'm at the Hallmarkies podcast. We've got some really fun stuff coming up this next week. Like I said, we have the live episode. Then we also have my interview with author Debbie Macomber over there. And so that was really fun. That's going to post tomorrow on Hallmarkies podcast. So please check that out. And thanks again. And we will talk to you all later. Bye, everyone.